Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to get your speed tree models into Fallout New Vegas. This is for the newer versions of speed tree, speed tree 8 Plus. Anything that supports SPM models, we're going to be converting them into statics for Fallout New Vegas. I'm currently using speed tree 9. Sometimes I switch back and forth between 8 and 9 depending on what models I have. But for this video, I'm using Honey Mesquite tree from speed tree 9. If you want the animations to work properly, you're going to need two versions of 3ds Max. You're going to need a newer version of 3ds Max, usually 2020 plus. I use 2022. And then you're also going to need an older version of 3ds Max. You're going to need 2013, and that's to import the Morpher animations into Nifskope properly. Alright, so with that out of the way, we can start. You're going to want to have your speed tree model open and export as mesh. And then you're going to want to save it to a separate folder. Make sure you save it as FBX. And once you do that, then we're going to open it up in 3ds Max 2020 or 2020 plus. If you don't care about the speed tree animation, or if you just want to make your own, you can import into any 3D modeling software that you want. Alright, so just make sure that you have animation checked, looping checked, and frame rate. You can play with a lot of this stuff, but main things you want is the cache formatting to be MCC, and then the geometry to be checked up at the top. Under group by, make sure geometry type is selected, and then scaling can be kind of funky. It can be hit or miss. Sometimes you get like super big trees, sometimes you get super small trees. You really just have to play with it. You can scale it up or down once we get it into 3ds Max, depending on how big it is or how small it is in game. And make sure the texture format is DDS. So now we're just going to import into the newer version of 3ds. Go to our Honey Mesquite. Make sure animation is checked. By default, it should just work. Should look like this. Textures should all be good. When you play, the animation should have imported. If it's not looping properly and it has like that jagged cut at the end, don't worry about that. I have a script in the description of this video. Go ahead and install it, and it's for 3ds Max. We're going to run that script to convert the speed tree animation into an animation that will work in New Vegas. This script can be used for more than just this. It can convert any animation into a Morpher animation. So if you have other animation formats, you can convert them into Morpher animations and they will be compatible with New Vegas. So once you have that script downloaded, you're going to want to select your whole mesh and go to Max Scripts. Hit Run Scripts and then navigate to the point cache to Morpher Script that you downloaded. And once that's open, it should pop up with a window. So max frames, we want our max frames to be equal to our maximum frames in 3ds Max. For us, it's 100 right now. Frame skipped is how many frames do you want it to skip? Basically, the higher this number, the more frames it will skip and the better for performance it is. But I usually just keep this around 2. I wouldn't really go any lower. If you need like really precise timing, then you could lower it to 1 and it will get every frame exact. Make sure keyframe is checked. If you check create looping animation, the script will manually create a looping animation for you. We're going to leave this checked because our looping animation got a little funky and it cuts back. Loop buffer is how many frames away from the last frame that you want it to start looping. So the bigger this number is, the slower it'll loop back into the first frame. We're going to go ahead and set this to 25 and hit run. So now it's creating an animation for each node that we selected. It's the reason why we selected the whole mesh when we ran the script. And as you can see, it created the animation. The keyframes are 2 frames apart like we put, and it has a loop buffer of 25 frames, which is the big gap that you see at the end. So it's taking 25 frames to loop back to frame 1. So now we can go ahead and export this to 3ds Max 2013. The reason why we have to import into 3ds 2013 is to use its NIF plugins, because the 2018 version of the NIF plugins won't import the Morpher modifier properly. It won't convert it to a geomorph, and the animation just won't work in game. So go ahead and export. We're gonna save this as an FBX again. Make sure you keep a copy of this FBX, because once we turn it into a NIF, the animation just won't import properly back into 3ds Max. It's also good to keep this file around just so you can rescale it, because you can't rescale meshes with geomorph nodes attached to them in Nifskope. So once you're in here, you want to scroll all the way down, and under the file format, make sure the version is set to FBX 2013. And everything else should be the same. Just go ahead and hit OK. It's going to save and pop up with a warning. Just hit OK to that. When you import into 2013, for whatever reason, the FBX loses its textures. But we're going to go ahead and fix that once we get into Nifskope. Alright, so we're just going to import our new FBX that we made, the one with the Morpher modifier attached. See, I saved this one as animated. Hit open, hit OK, and you can see it lost its textures, but it kept the keyframing. It still animates. If you go to the modifiers tab, you can see it still has its Morpher modifier. So now we can go ahead and export it into Nifskope. And from here, if you know what you're doing, you can pretty much, figure out the rest from here. But we're just going to import it into Nifskope, set up all the DDS textures so that way they have alpha channels, and set the geomorph animation to looping. So here I'm exporting it to my model organizer folder. Make sure you have skin modifier checked, and then generate strips and stuff. Go ahead and hit export. And you can see it's in Nifskope, it's animating. It's black right now because it kind of messes up the vertex colors, and it has no textures. So the first thing we're going to do is change this NI node to a BS fade node. Just going to right click on it and go to convert, and then find BS fade node. Then you're going to go to the BSX flags and double click on the little flag icon. We're going to uncheck all these boxes and check animated and havoc. Then we're going to go to each one of the tri-strips, and we're going to go to the geomorph modifier inside of each one of the tri-strips and change the flags in those. So we're going to change it from clamp to cycle. This will change it from playing the animation once to a looping animation. And we have to do that for each one of the tri-strips. So we're going to go into each one of those blocks and change its geomorph controller to cycle. And after that, you're going to need to reapply all the textures for each NI tri-strip. And then add collision if you want. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, and I'll probably make a longer video in the near future, but for right now, this is the closest thing to documentation that we have for SpeedTree. So I'm just going to speed this up, and you guys can just watch a time lapse of me just reapplying the textures and changing everything to a looping animation, getting rid of the vertex colors, things like that. And I'll show you the final product in game once this finishes. Alright, and here's the final product. It doesn't have collisions, so I guess it's not like the final product, but this is pretty much how it's going to look in game. And I didn't create an ESM, so I'm just going to open it up in the editor. Alright, and you can see it's in game and it's animating the geomorph animations. Everything's working. We can go ahead and make an ESP and, I don't know, release a tree mod, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. If you have any questions, just comment down below. I'll have my Discord linked in the description. So yeah.